Hello, everyone. We're back for another game review. We're talking about something that is we're a little late on, but this is Donkey Kong Country, a game that came out before we were born, before we were conceived. But we're going to talk about it anyway. Who cares if it's older than us? You know, we're into MILFs. But Donkey Kong is a good game and a character that I enjoy. I had a fun time with this game. How do you feel about Donkey Kong Country? I know you like it a lot more than I do, but
I'm
that was a
sorry.
great intro. That was a great intro.
I still had to collect myself after that fucking intro you just gave. But let me tell you something. I'm a fan of this game. Donkey Kong Country, the Super Nintendo classic, the game that spawned a trilogy for Rare and really cemented Rare as, I think, a really important team for Nintendo, even though they did done work before. Of course, Battletoads, now there are other stuff on NES and SNES. This is just such an important game, and I think one that holds up really elegantly.
Yeah, it's definitely one that I have a mixed relationship with. I played through it the other day. We heard about, of course, the somewhat exciting announcement of Donkey Kong Country 2 coming to Super Nintendo Online, which was clearly overshadowed by Mario's Picross announcement at the same time. But we decided, hey, I should play this game. I haven't played that game before, so I played it, and we're going to also be playing Donkey Kong Country 2 when it releases 2 days, I think, Wednesday.
Yeah, on Wednesday.
But I definitely have a mixed relationship with this. This year is my year of going back and playing old games. I played Link to the Past, I played Super Metroid, I played Mario 64, I'm playing Halo Combat Evolved. You know, I'm picking up on the classics. And
Yoshi Island, please.
I will play that. That's up on my list. Donkey Kong Country, I think, is a game that is simultaneously way ahead of its time, but also really shows the signs of its time. So I've got my notes pulled up. The positives are there. There's plenty of positives. He can't even hear me right now.
That's not good.
Yeah, it's not good. But you know what? Who cares? You'll be your monkey's uncle. I'll be a monkey's aunt. I like saying things to make him uncomfortable. You know, he does that to me sometimes, but I just gotta pick up. All right, hey.
Cool. There we are.
Positive notes. There's a bunch of them. There's a good game, but there also, I do think there are a lot of things that I personally did not enjoy that I think I need to talk about.
Yeah, I think Donkey Kong Country is a really interesting game because, I think a lot like Star Fox, it represents a really interesting moment in development history where 3D was being toyed around with in various ways, but it wasn't really ready to be implemented yet. And I think that's really, really clear from the game's aesthetic immediately, which I think is gorgeous, but in a weird, I like weird aesthetics type of way.
Yeah.
Because this is a pretty good argument to make that this game is conventionally ugly, but I think it's really charming. Essentially, the way that they created the game is that they fully modeled these characters in 3D and then used computer software to scan them and turn them into 2D sprites, which gives the whole thing like a 3D vibe. But it's a 2D platform with a lot of the hallmarks you understand from an SNES 2D platformer. Parallax scrolling in the background, a lot of good detail in the animations and in the sprite work in general. But it's in the context of the pseudo 3D aesthetic, which I think really dates it, but I think makes it compelling if you're a fucking huge dork like me and you like your Nintendo and your Nintendo history.
Yeah. So I think that honestly, but there's two things. There's the aesthetic, and then there's the level design in the general gameplay.
Yeah.
That I think are the hallmarks of exactly what I was trying to say earlier. With it's ahead of its time in so many ways, but it also does show. It very clearly shows a sign of age. The 3D sprites it's a very cool idea. I think that they have fantastic animation and they show lots of character, a lot more than almost any other platformers from that era. But there's some aspects to them that are it's just jank. And like Diddy's sprite has like gray pixels on its edges that like show up on certain backgrounds, and like it's like they didn't crop him properly. It's like, but I don't know exactly what that's from, but hi, Abram. Yes, you.
Hi, backlog banter reporter in the field. One thing to note is that I played the game first on SNES Classic, then again on SNES Online. You played on SNES Online.
Yes.
When you put these games in such high resolution,
Sure.
A lot of the debug pixels are way more apparent than when everything was a little bit smoother and fuzzier on original hardware.
That's true.
So some of that is just artifacting by merit of seeing these games in a much higher quality than they were ever intended to be originally.
Of course. Yeah. And that's reasonable, but I do think that, hey, it was my experience with the game,
Right.
and regardless of the fact that they weren't intended to be seen, they are in the game, and I would consider that something that it doesn't track a ton. It's just kind of like, what the heck? Like,
For sure.
how did that happen? But other than that, I do think that the visuals look great. I love the environment design. I think that the color palettes that they use are fantastic. One thing I don't think holds up in terms of environment design are the underwater levels, which all look the exact damn same and aren't very visually compelling. Which is fine. Which is interesting because they're fine water levels. I mean, water levels are usually something hit or miss. But visually, they're just super bland, and it's unfortunate because all the rest of the levels have such a unique visual style.
The one thing the water levels do have, which I've always loved, is the effect on your screen that makes it look like you're underwater.
Yeah,
Everything's distorted a little bit. That's really cool. But I get where you're coming from. I think those levels are really lifted up a lot by the fucking S tier David Wise music, which we'll get into a little bit. But to the point about level design, I think what I love most about this game is the way that it feels so natural and feels so complete. It really does feel like you're exploring a legitimate location. And I think it has a sense of place that a lot of other games of that generation don't. Even though I prefer a game like Yoshi's Island, I think that the way that every obstacle and everything, there's some weird like industrial levels in the game, but for the most part, the overall aesthetic and vibe feels very much in universe. And you're jumping on trees and you're jumping on fucking actual environments instead of just obstacles in the background, which I think is really nice.
Yeah, and actually I think there's one thing that makes that the completeness of the game even more apparent is that the levels are essentially the overworld. When you complete a level, you're in a new area because you traveled that distance in the level. It's not Mario where there's a patch of mushrooms, you jump into it, and then there's a whole world of mushrooms. If you are crossing a bridge over the water, then you're crossing the bridge over the water, and you're in a new area of the island after that level, which I think is very cool. And it makes the island feel a lot more complete in a way that a lot of 2D platformers don't. I also think that one of the things about the game that I personally like is just the absolutely ridiculous barrel obsession. Like it's dumb, it's ridiculous, but I do think that it gives a lot of charm in a way that I was not expecting. Because of course, Donkey Kong barrels, they're closely associated, but they just put barrels in every possible orifice that this game could have. I mean, Funky Kong has a barrel plane. That's a little weird. All the power-ups, all of the save points, all of the health bits, those are all barrels. You travel in barrels. You throw barrels. You ride barrels. There's barrels.
I think that speaks to part of why I love this game so much. And even though I think that probably Retro's DKC games are better, I prefer this game because it's got a sense of charm and attention to the detail that I love. Not only in the way you're talking about how the overworld and sub areas like meld together, and in terms of the barrels, but it's little things like you go to a bonus room and you fuck it up, so Diddy Kong takes his hat off and throws it on the ground and steps on it really angrily, or when you're fighting King K. Rool and there's the fake out credit sequence with the fucking Kremlings in the credits. The game just really exudes a personality that I think is so special.
Yeah, and I think that was actually the first note that I took down on my notes here, is that the humor and the personality just absolutely shine through dialogue and animations. This game has dialogue, which I was not expecting, but Cranky Kong is fucking hilarious. He's meta as hell. He's kind of an asshole, to be honest, but it's just really funny. And Funky Kong and Candy Kong, all three of those characters that talk, absolutely hilarious. And I do think that the charm of the credits, the fake out credit sequence, and then those joke credits, and then the actual credits afterward, which show all the characters and they give the names for all the enemies and stuff. It's like they didn't need to do that, but it's just so charming and funny that it's the things like that, the charm and the unnecessary moments of creativity that do make this a very good game, in my opinion. But all right, we got a but. Oh well, you only other positive to talk about? I've got a few other ones, but I have
There's
some
a big
negative.
one we're missing.
Yes,
Daddy
music,
David Wise.
Music. Yeah, the music. Oh God, they're very good soundtrack.
I mean, David Wise is notorious in a good way for just being a wonderful composer.
Yeah.
And personally, I think this is my favorite work of his. Of course, keep in mind, of the original DKC trilogy, I've only played one. I'm very excited to play two in a couple days. But I just think that every theme is so iconic, and underwater ambiance or aquatic ambiance, I always confuse that, will always be one of my favorite video game tracks of all time. And I think that is part of the reason why I love those underwater levels, and when Donkey Kong just fucks Marlin to make him swim faster, and perhaps the most dangerously erotic animation in any Nintendo game. I think there's a lot of charm to be had, and I think the music just elevates the entire game in a way that is is expected nowadays, but when soundtracks are a little bit more chiptune, I think this music was just even more impactful, and it remains as impactful today.
That's true. The music is really great. A lot of these songs, and I'm noticing this as I'm going back and playing classic games like A Link to the Past, like Super Metroid, and like this, is that I know all these songs.
Yeah.
Mostly just because of loving to listen to video game soundtracks and because they play in Smash Brothers. And it's making it, I mean, it doesn't take away from how great the songs are, but I don't get to experience these songs for the first time necessarily because I've heard them in Smash Bros. Levels all my life. But that's a very personal thing that doesn't detract from how good the songs are. I also, one thing you brought up was Marlin and just the mounts in this game. Mounts are something you don't really see. I mean, Yoshi, we don't really see that in a lot of platformers, but they're all really good. I enjoy that there's a bunch of different ones and they're integrated into the game in an interesting way. I do wish that they would show up more, to be honest. There's only a few levels that have them, but when they do show up, they do help you feel a little more powerful, and it's a fun change of pace.
Shout out to Rambi. I love his name.
Okay.
But now we gotta talk about gameplay.
Yeah. The gameplay is very interesting to me. I don't think it's bad. I think that the game design philosophy, and we sort of tittled on this in our texts over the last few days, is that I had a pretty hard time with this game because of the old school and outdated game philosophy of basically one shot. You only have one health. I mean, max you can have is 2 with a second character. And the fact that if you lose all your lives, which can be pretty easy, you get sent back. I don't know. I did things to the rewind system in this game that should not be expressed on the internet. I was using it so much, I realized that I felt like I was taking away from a lot of the charm of the game, because I would, you get hit once and you either replay the entire level or some of the level if you have a checkpoint, or I go back 5 seconds. And I could only beat this game if I used rewind. I would not have beaten this game if I did not use rewind. That's just the kind of gamer I am. I'm not a fan of being incredibly challenged in games, and that's obviously a very personal thing.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. It was a weird balance where I felt like I was killing the charm of the game because I was using rewind too much, but then I wouldn't be able to experience the charm of the game without using rewind so much. So I'm very conflicted.
I think that's totally fair. I felt myself having a similar struggle playing Link to the Past when we played, because I found myself getting more frustrated by that game's mechanics, so I was using rewind more. When I beat this game first, I beat it on SNES Classic, so I had save states but not rewind. Or did I have rewind? I don't remember.
No, they don't have rewind on there.
Okay. Do they? No, they don't. I don't care. The point is I didn't rewind. I use save states a lot, though. The fact is...
I've got my guy right here.
The fact is, there she is. It's a difficult game, for sure. And it's a different style of platformer than we get a lot of today, or even that we got a lot of then.
Yeah.
I think it's a really interesting hybridization of a Mario-style platformer with the more Sonic the Hedgehog momentum-based gameplay.
Yeah.
So for me, that middle ground is really, really engaging and interesting, the way that you can roll into enemies to get more speed, and the levels are fairly short, so they become a little bit more twitchy, like Sonic does, but still having a little bit more of the methodical elements of Mario. So I find it really compelling, but it's fucking hard.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's inherently a negative or a positive, and I don't think your experience is invalidated in any way, shape, or form because you used a lot of rewind.
Yeah. It's all just internal conflict for me that's really causing my issues. But I do think that there's some things about this game that, as someone who has played a lot of video games and does not like certain kinds of video games, the idea that a lot of these levels, at least as me on a first playthrough, a lot of them are somewhat memorization based, enemies just come the fuck out of nowhere, or platforms just like will be off screen, or you have to jump into what seems like a pit, but there's actually a platform down there that you have to go to. Sometimes the camera doesn't exactly follow you. If you're going too fast, then you can end up going off a cliff or running into an enemy or something like that. And it was those things that showed me that, okay, this is an older style of game design philosophy, where they wanted you to sort of just get good scrub on these levels and push through and learn the levels like the back of your hand, which is something that I'm personally not a huge fan of, because I like feeling like I'm in control of the levels, even on the first playthrough. Like, I can puzzle through it as I'm going through and don't necessarily need to get hit by something bullshitty to replay the level and then dodge it. But that's just me being a more modern gamer, I guess.
I mean, I understand that, and I think it's important to contextualize just how short this game really is, especially once you start moving through it. And I think part of the reason for its difficulty is the fact that a lot of the emphasis on the game then and still today is its fidelity in terms of presentation and in terms of its aesthetic. That was really the game's central thrust. So the mechanics are a little bit simpler, and I think the game is harder to compensate for its shorter length in comparison to the games that are released around. Like a Super Mario World has way more content, a Yoshi's Island has more content, a Kirby Superstar has more content, a Mega Man X has more content. But I think in its place is a really enduring style of platformer that if you can get around the difficulty and the more janky elements before a more organic difficulty was implemented into a lot of 2D platformers, there's a really interesting set of mechanics there that I think plays differently than a lot of what we had at the time, and still plays differently than a lot of what we have now, even as we're seeing a resurgence in 2D platformers in the indie scene. I really don't think anything plays quite like DKC, other than DKC, and then of course Retro's revitalization of it.
Yeah, but look, I'm complaining about the difficulty. I'm complaining about the game design. I'm complaining about the levels, whatever. This game, regardless of my experience with difficulty or my opinion on old school game design, has so much charm and so much creativity and is so interestingly unique that I still had a very good time with it. And regardless of the fact that I was frustrated by the level design or abused the rewind, which was a very personal thing, obviously, the fact that I enjoyed it so much is a testament to the game is very good and does hold up surprisingly well today, which is something I was not really expecting, because I've gone back and played some older games that I personally don't feel hold up very well. But even though this game was very difficult and had cracks in the design that proved that it was old, it was very much ahead of its time in terms of, I mean, I've played some of the SNES Mario games, but I do think that this one is just pretty much leagues ahead of. I haven't played Yoshi's Island, but at least of Mario World.
I mean, I agree too. Personally, I do prefer Yoshi's Island. I'll be curious to see if I would prefer DKC 2 to Yoshi's Island, because that's widely considered to be the best of the trilogy.
Sure.
Which is why I'm super excited to play that, because I think a more refined take on what we had here could result in my favorite SNES platform. But we'll see when we cross that bridge. And I do think your point about it holding up is important. Because there's a lot of games from the SNES that pushed fidelity at the detriment of the experience at the time, but specifically now. Believe it or not, I love Star Fox 64.
Mm-hmm.
But going back to play the original Star Fox, that is a showcase of Mode 7, and that is not a playable video game. Mm-hmm. Playing Star Fox with basic geometric shapes at like 15 to 20 frames a second is not compelling. And even games like Super Mario Kart or the original F-Zero are fun and have their charm, but they were made to show off the tech. That's what they were there to do. And this game does that too, but I think it does it in the context of a much stronger game.
Yeah. So. Well, that's about all I have to say about Donkey Kong Country, released in 1994 for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Very good game. It's on Super Nintendo Online. Even if you do feel like you have a problem with the challenge and need to abuse the rewind function in nasty ways, just give it a try. Give it a try. Yeah. It's worth it to get through and see Cricky Kong's dialogue, to see the joke credits, to experience all the music and the wonderful level design. And a lot of the levels have really cool gimmicks, which is something that I don't think happens a lot in earlier platformers, but really shows that they were forward thinking on this. But very good game. Glad I played it. Probably won't play it again, at least for a while, but I mean, interested to see how much, if at all more, I enjoyed DKC 2. in a few days.
And we'll be back very soon. I don't know, but I'm assuming it's just as short. So I'd say maybe this weekend, early next week, we'll be recording that DKC 2 video because I'm basically going to drop everything I'm playing when that comes out because I'm very excited.
Yeah.
So there we go.
There we
DKC
go.
discussion in the books. Look at that.
All right. See you guys in another video.
I want to sit awkwardly with the audience longer. I'm going to quickly just pull up the game's Wikipedia page so I have got release date and stuff because I don't have that top of my head. That's a great song. But that's a new Donkey Kong tune. Okay, I've got all the information I need.
It's not. That's a menu theme from fucking Donkey Kong Country.
See, here's my problem.
DK Jungle Swing.
I immediately associate that tune with the track in Mario Kart 7 and 8. So I thought that Retro composed it. Fuck.
Okay.